I moved 1,600 miles for my fiancé of 8 years, only to find his secret Reddit account. He wasn't just cheating. He was posting for months about being in love with someone else. And he made me help him buy her birthday gifts. They say hindsight is 20/20, but looking back at the last 8 years, I don't see a blurred image. I see a masterpiece that someone decided to slash with a knife just as it was being framed. My fiancé, let's call him Mark, and I were the it couple. We met in the messy, caffeine-fueled hallways of college. We grew up together. We navigated the terrifying transition from being broke students to established professionals. Through every career high and every soul-crushing low, Mark was there. When my mental health spiraled a few years ago and I felt like I was drowning, he was the one who pulled me back to shore. He was supportive, patient, and unconditionally loving. Or so I thought. When Mark got a job offer halfway across the country, it wasn't even a question. We were a team. We were getting married. I quit my job, said goodbye to my family, and packed every memory we owned into a moving truck. 1,600 miles. That's how far I traveled to start our forever. But looking back, the rot had started months before the first box was taped shut. It started with a work trip. Mark came back different, but in a way that's hard to pin down unless you've lived with someone for nearly a decade. He was distracted. He mentioned a new coworker, Sarah. At first, it was just professional. Then, it became, Sarah said this funny thing. Or, Sarah really helped me out with this project. I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? We were solid. To make matters more comfortable, Sarah was actually dating a mutual friend of ours. We started hanging out as a foursome. Double dates, drinks after work, weekend hangouts. I actually liked her. I thought, great, I'm making a new friend right before we move away. Then came the care package incident. About a month before our big move, Mark approached me with a sweet idea. It was Sarah's birthday. He told me he wanted to do something nice for her because she had been such a great help at the office. He asked me as fiancé to help him put together a care package for her. I spent 2 hours in the store picking out her favorite chocolates, a scented candle I thought she'd like, and some high-end stationery. I felt like a good person. I felt like we were a kind, generous couple. I didn't realize I was literally gift wrapping the tools for my own replacement. At the time, I just felt a slight ick. Mark isn't usually the type to go above and beyond for friends' birthdays. He usually forgets his own brother's birthday until I remind him, but I brushed it off. I told myself he was just stressed about the move and trying to maintain his professional network. The move happened. We settled into our new home, 1,600 miles away from everyone I knew. I was lonely, but I had him. Or I thought I did, but Mark was distant. He was glued to his phone. He'd leave the room to take work calls at 9:00 p.m. The mental health excuse started coming out. He told me he was struggling, feeling self-destructive, and needed space. And because I loved him, gave it to him. I comforted him. I told him we'd get through this rough patch together. I had no idea that while I was comforting him in our new bed, he was scrolling through Reddit, posting in secret forums, asking strangers for advice on how to handle the guilt of being in love with 2 women at once. He wasn't struggling with a rough patch. He was struggling with the fact that he had successfully moved his loyal fiancé across the country, while his heart was still 1,600 miles away in a coworker's office. I found the messages first. Cutesy, flirty, I miss your voice type of texts. When I confronted him, he cried. He gaslit me. He told me it was just validation seeking because of his depression. He begged me to stay. He told me he wanted to fix us, and I believed him. Until this morning, when I found the Reddit post that changed everything. The hardest part wasn't finding the messages. It was finding the anonymous Reddit post he wrote 100 days ago. While he was holding my hand and telling me he couldn't wait to marry me, he was telling thousands of strangers that his soul belonged to another woman. And the dates? The dates proved that every "I love you" he said to me for the last 4 months was a calculated lie. Finding the text was a punch to the stomach, but finding his Reddit account? That was the autopsy of our relationship. I found it by accident. He had left his laptop open, and a notification popped up, a reply to a comment. The username was a variation of a private joke we had from college. My heart did a slow, painful somersault. I clicked. There it was. A chronicle of his betrayal, laid out in black and white, organized by timestamps that lined up perfectly with the happiest moments of my life. I sat on the floor of our new, half-unpacked apartment, surrounded by boxes that represented our future, and I began to read. His first post was from 4 months ago. Is it possible to be in love with two people at once? He asked the internet. He described me as a wonderful human, a supportive partner who had stayed by him through his lowest lows. He wrote about lovely adventures. Reading it felt like being complimented by a ghost. He praised me just enough to make himself feel like a good guy who was simply caught in a whirlwind. Then he described her, Sarah. He didn't talk about her looks or sex appeal. No, he made it sound much more dangerous. He called it an emotional engagement. He talked about how he found himself going above and beyond to help her with projects. He admitted to making an active effort to hear her voice every single day. I felt sick. I remembered those days. Those were the weeks we were supposed to be celebrating our engagement. While I was looking at wedding venues and Pinterest boards for flower arrangements, he was sitting in his office, typing out how captivated he was by a woman who sat 3 desks away. But the month update on his post was the killing blow. Update: coworker said she loves me, and I reciprocated. It read, I think it's time to break this off with my so. It isn't fair to string her along if I'm not totally devoted. I checked the date of that update. It was 2 months ago. 2 months ago, he had already decided to leave me. 2 months ago, he knew he was in love with Sarah. But did he leave? No, instead, he let me pack up my entire life. He let me sign a new lease 1,600 miles away. He watched me cry as I said goodbye to my parents. Knowing full well he had already told another woman he loved her. He didn't break up with me because he was confused. He didn't break up with me because he was brave. He waited. He dragged me across the country because he was a coward who wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted the security of an 8-year relationship while he chased the high of a new crush. And then I saw the comments. Random strangers were telling him, just be honest, or you're home wrecking, or think about your fiancé. And his responses were the slimiest part. He played the victim. He blamed his mental health. He said he was struggling and self-destructive. He used his depression as a shield to justify why he was destroying the life of the person who had cared for him the most. The most disgusting realization hit me like a wave of cold water. The care package. I remembered the day I helped him pick out those chocolates for her birthday. According to the Reddit timeline, he had already told her he loved her by then. He sat there, watching me, his devoted fiancé, thoughtfully choose gifts for the woman he was cheating with. He didn't just betray me. He made me a participant in his affair. He turned my kindness into a weapon against me. I looked up from the laptop and saw him walk into the room with a glass of water, looking tired, looking like the man I thought I knew. Hey babe, he said, his voice soft. You okay? You look pale. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned the laptop screen toward him and asked one question. When were you planning on telling me that you've been in love with her for 70 days? The look on his face wasn't guilt. It was the look of a man who had just realized his safety net had been set on fire. When I turned that laptop screen around, I expected him to break down. I expected him to beg for forgiveness. Instead, he did something much worse. He looked me in the eyes and told me that his cheating was actually a symptom of his depression. He tried to make me feel guilty for being angry at a sick man while he was still texting the other woman. Under the dinner table, the silence in our new apartment was so thick I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Mark stood there, the glass of water still in his hand, staring at his own words on the screen. For a second, I saw his mask slip. The supportive, loving fiancé disappeared, and in his place was a stranger who had been living a double life for months. I can explain, he whispered. The classic, cliché line of every caught cheater. Explain what, Mark? I asked. my voice surprisingly steady despite the roaring in my ears. Explain the part where you told her you loved her 2 months before we moved? Or the part where you watched me pack my life into a truck while you were captivated by your coworker? Or maybe you want to explain why you had me pick out her birthday present. He sat down, putting his head in his hands. Then, the performance began. Been in a really dark place, he started, his voice cracking. My mental health, it's been spiraling. I didn't know how to handle the pressure of the move, the wedding, the future. I was looking for validation anywhere I could find it. Sarah, she was just there. It didn't mean anything. I was just being self-destructive. This is what people mean when they talk about gaslighting. He was taking his conscious choice to betray me and reframing it as a mental health crisis. He wanted me to stop being the betrayed fiancé and start being his nurse again. He wanted to use the very kindness I'd shown him during his past struggles against me. If it didn't mean anything, I said, pointing at the Reddit post, why did you write that you were emotionally engaged? Why did you tell her you love her? And why, for God's sake, did we go on a couple's weekend with her and her boyfriend in June? That was the part that made my skin crawl. In June, right before our move, we had gone away for a weekend with Sarah and her boyfriend who, I should mention, was a friend of Mark's. I remembered us sitting around a campfire drinking wine, laughing. I remembered thinking how lucky I was to have such a solid circle. The whole time, Mark was looking across the fire at his friend's girlfriend, sharing a secret "I love you" while I sat right next to him. It wasn't just an affair, it was a performance, a cruel, slimy play, where I was the only person who didn't know I was a character. I was going to end it with her, Mark pleaded. I posted that on Reddit because I was trying to process the guilt. I chose you. I moved here with you, didn't I? No, Mark, I countered. You didn't choose me. You chose to keep your safety net while you auditioned for a new life. You dragged me 1,600 miles away from my support system so that if things didn't work out with Sarah, you'd still have me to cook your meals and tell you everything will be okay. You didn't move for us, you moved because you were too cowardly to be alone. Then came the trickle truth. Okay, fine, he admitted. We talked a lot, and maybe there was some flirting, but it never went further than that. It was all digital, I swear. I looked at him, disgusted. Every time I presented irrefutable evidence, he would admit to just that much and no more. He was like a lawyer trying to settle a case he knew he was losing. He wasn't remorseful for the pain he caused. He was only sorry that his secret Reddit confessional had been found. He spent the next 3 hours trying to convince me to stay. He promised to go to therapy. He promised to delete his Reddit. He promised to go no contact with her. And for a few hours, in that lonely apartment in a city where I knew no one, I almost wavered. I wanted the 8 years we spent to mean something. I wanted to believe that the man who held me when I cried was still in there somewhere. But then I remembered the birthday package, the chocolates I picked, the note I wrote. I realized that while I was being the perfect partner, he was mocking my devotion by involving me in his pursuit of another woman. I'm ending it, I finally said. He didn't even argue. The mental health mask dropped. He just nodded, looked at the floor and said, I guess I don't love you anymore anyway. The coldness of that statement was the final nail. 8 years of history, discarded in a single sentence, because he had found a newer version. But the story wasn't over. Because Sarah's boyfriend Mark's friend still had no idea. And I wasn't about to let them sweep this under the rug. I thought breaking up was the end of the nightmare. I thought the truth was finally out. But then I caught him in the bathroom at 2:00 a.m., frantically deleting messages. He wasn't trying to save our relationship. He was trying to save his affair from having any consequences. That's when I realized, he didn't just stop loving me, he had become a person I didn't even recognize. After I told him it was over, I expected a period of mourning. I expected him to sit in the wreckage of the 8-year life we had built and at least feel the weight of it. But Mark wasn't mourning. He was cleaning. Not the apartment, he was cleaning his digital trail. A few hours after our breakup talk, I walked past the bathroom and heard the frantic tapping of fingers on a screen. I knew that sound. I opened the door, and there he was, hunched over his phone. When he saw me, he didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. I'm just deleting the threads, okay? He snapped. You wanted us to be over, so I'm moving on. Deleting them? Or hiding them? I asked. I realized then that he wasn't sorry for what he did to me. He was only worried about the consequences. See, Sarah's boyfriend was his friend, and Mark knew that if the full extent of their emotional engagement came out, the I love yous, the secret phone calls, the Reddit posts, his reputation back home would be shredded. He would be the guy who stole his friend's girlfriend while his own fiancé helped pack the bags. I spent the rest of that night looking through my own screenshots. I had taken photos of his Reddit post before he could delete it. I read through the messages I had seen before he wiped them. The cutesy nature of them made me want to throw up. They weren't just validation-seeking texts. They were deep. They were talking about a future together. They were mocking the obligations they had to their current partners. I realized he had been trickle-truthing me for weeks. Every time I confronted him, he gave me 10% of the truth to make me shut up, while hiding the other 90. You have to tell him, I told Mark the next morning. Tell who? Sarah's boyfriend. He's your friend, Mark. He deserves to know that the woman he's living with and the man he calls a friend have been reciprocating love behind his back for months. Mark laughed. A cold, dry laugh. Why do you want to blow up everyone's life? Isn't it enough that you've ruined ours? I was stunned. I had ruined it? By finding out he was cheating? If you don't message him by tonight, I said, my voice trembling but firm, I will. I have the Reddit screenshots. I have the timeline. I will send him everything. He hemmed and hawed. He tried to worm his way out of it, saying it would ruin Sarah's career or that it wasn't that serious. He even tried to tell me that Sarah's boyfriend probably wouldn't care anyway. Finally, under the threat of me hitting send, he messaged him. But even then, he couldn't be honest. He sent a watered-down, pathetic version of the truth. He told the guy, hey, my fiancé felt some weird vibes between us, and she's reacting poorly. So I thought I should tell you we had a bit of a flirtation. He made me out to be the crazy, jealous ex instead of the victim of a months-long betrayal. He didn't send the Reddit post where he claimed to be captivated. He didn't mention the I love yous. Send the Reddit link, I demanded, standing over him. Send the whole thing, or I do. Reluctantly, he did. And then we waited. The response from the boyfriend was the most surreal part of this entire nightmare. He replied saying it was no big deal, and that, whatever floats their boat. Whether he was in shock, or they had an open relationship I didn't know about, or he just didn't care, it didn't matter. What mattered was that Mark was finally exposed. He couldn't hide behind his mental health excuse anymore. We had a massive blow-up after that. Mean things were said, things you can only say to someone who knows your every weakness. He went outside to call his family, probably to tell them his version of why the wedding was off. When he came back in, the fire was gone. He just looked empty. He sat down on the edge of the couch, and, for the first time in weeks, he apologized. And for a second, I actually believed it was sincere. We sat there in that 1,600-mile-away apartment, and we did something I never thought we'd do. We cried together. We mourned the 8 years. We mourned the kids we talked about having. We mourned the life we were supposed to have. You might think I'm weak for crying with him, but I needed it. I needed the only other person in the world who knew what our forever was supposed to look like, to acknowledge that it was dead. But even as we cried, I knew one thing. The man I was crying with wasn't the man I loved. That man died the moment he decided Sarah's birthday was more important than my heart. We are still living together. Every morning, I wake up, and for a split second, I forget. Then I see the packed boxes and remember. I moved 1,600 miles to start a life with a man who was already mourning us. He says it was temporary insanity brought on by a breakdown, but I finally realized it wasn't insanity. It was a choice. And I'm choosing to never let anyone make me feel this small again. The aftermath of a long-term betrayal isn't a clean break. It's a slow, agonizing bleed. Because we had just moved, we were stuck. Two people who had spent 8 years sharing everything were now sharing a small apartment as total strangers. Mark started seeing a therapist. Suddenly, The mental health narrative became his full-time job. He would come home and tell me, with tear-filled eyes, that he was realizing he didn't actually love Sarah, that he was just pushing me away because he didn't feel worthy of my love. He called it self-sabotage. He called it temporary insanity. For a week, the weaker part of me, the part that still smelled his cologne and remembered our college graduation, wanted to believe him. I found myself thinking, what if he gets better? What if this really was just a midlife crisis at 28? What if the old Mark comes back? I wanted a miraculous resurrection of the last 8 years. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare and find him holding me, telling me it was all a mistake. But then, I would look at my phone. I would see the screenshots of his Reddit post. I would remember him asking me with a straight face to help him pick out a gift for her. And the realization would hit me like a physical blow. Even if he gets better, I will never be well with him. Trust isn't a ceramic vase you can glue back together. It's like a mirror. Once it's shattered, you can put the pieces back. But every time you look into it, you'll see the cracks. I would spend the rest of my life wondering who he was messaging when he went to the bathroom. I would spend every work trip of his in a state of a panic attack. He didn't just break my heart. He broke my sense of reality. I've spent the last few days doing the hardest thing I've ever had to do, living my own life while he's in the next room. I've started exploring this new city on my own. I go to coffee shops where no one knows my name, and certainly no one knows I'm the girl whose fiancé fell in love with the coworker on Reddit. The anger is tired now. All that's left is a quiet, heavy heartbreak. Mark is still mourning the life we had. We cry together sometimes, which feels unnatural and necessary all at once. It's the funeral of our 20s. He told me, I can't imagine never seeing you again. It feels wrong. And I told him, it felt wrong when you were telling her you loved her while I was choosing our kitchen curtains. I know I'm going to be okay. I'm 28. I'm young, I'm resilient, and I have a capacity for love that he clearly couldn't handle. I know I deserve someone who doesn't need to experiment with other people to realize what they have. I deserve someone who sees me as the destination, not a layover. To anyone reading this who has been the fiancé or the spouse in a secret Reddit post, you are not the problem. Their inability to be honest isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their cowardice. The idea of a life without him still burns. It feels like a limb has been amputated, but I'd rather live with a limp than stay with the person who cut it off. I'm packing my things now, not for him, and not for us. I'm packing for me. I don't know where I'm going yet, but for the first time in 8 years, I'm the one making the map. I'm glad we're all paddling together in this boat. Reddit? It's a shitty boat, and the water is cold, but at least I'm finally the one holding the oars.